Welcome, 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 everyone. Welcome, welcome. This is another episode of the full set with Didi Delgado, your hostess with the mostess. And I'm really excited to be bringing one of my esteemed, I can't even call it a colleague. Y'all really need to give it up for someone I am admiring from afar and hopefully up close as I'm becoming a student of yours. We'll get into all of that. Just like I just want to be over here in my little Funlayo corner. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm like, Funlayo, please, please help me. So I just want to introduce to y'all my guest today. It's not really important why you landed here. The important part is that you are here.
That's
And
right.
y'all know I don't wrap my head for nobody, so we're gonna get into it. I decided to call this episode Oludumare is gonna trouble the water because I wanted to talk about the duality of multiple things, and we're gonna get into it. So, Iya Dr. Funlayo E. Wood-Menzies is your favorite Ifa-orisa scholar priestess, bringing love and light to the community through academic and spiritual programming. Blah. Currently a postdoctoral fellow in the Center for Black Studies Research at the University of California, Santa Barbara, gotta be clear. She earned a Ph.D. from Harvard University and an MA in history from the City College of New York, an initiate of Obatala and Iyanifa. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Just making sure.
Very
She is
good.
del- and thank you, thank you, thank you. She is delighted to contribute her voice as a scholar practitioner and is dedicated. I was about to say delighted, so you might want to add that. Delighted and dedicated to combining scholarship with social praxis. A native of New York City, Iya has conducted research in Nigeria, Ghana, Cuba, Trinidad, Peru, and the United States. Her research on Ifa-orisa and other African and diasporic traditions centers epistemology,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
gender and sexuality, healing, and intersections between religion, science, and technology. She serves as the managing editor of the Africana Studies Review, okay? And her work has been published in academic and popular venues, including the journal. I feel like Meg the Stallion right now. Hold on. That's what she should have been doing, tucking it right back in. Serves as the managing editor of the Africana Studies Review, and her work has been published in academic and popular venues, including the Journal of Africana Religions, Crosscurrents, and the Journal of Interreligious Studies and Medium. Committed to public scholarship, Iya Dr. Funlayo, consistently seeks to share her knowledge beyond the ivory tower. She lectures regularly and was featured in the PBS documentary Sacred Journeys
Oshun.
Oshun Osogbo in 2014, and an episode of the National Geographic's The Story of God with Morgan Freeman, 2017. She is the founding director of the African and Diasporic Religious Studies Association, ADRSA, and of Ashe Ire and Ifa Orisa Temple and Communiversity. Y'all better drop them coins that donate via Cash App, PayPal, Instagram. You got to donate somewhere. You got to follow her first of all. And then the
Big
second
thing.
thing is to drop them coins because we about to give you 150 for your appearance on the show. I know I say I ain't had no money. I still ain't got no money, but we gonna pull from the universe in order to give so that way
Oh
we can also
wow.
receive. So
That's
thank you.
beautiful. That's
Thank you.
beautiful. Thank you. Wow. I didn't even know you was gonna read all that. You got me feeling all like, oh, like that's me. She's talking about me.
No, we had to let the people know that like it doesn't matter. I really like how you say it's a communiversity. I
Yeah.
love the melding of those two words of community and university because people gotta get very familiar very quick. But before we get into all that, has been beating on my heart all day. Like I don't have anxiety about much stuff, but I was like, you know what? Something I did not ask Daisy to do, but maybe it wasn't the right time. But I need to ask you to do is to bless this conversation if you are so comfortable and also like give a healing word to those who are tuning in because I feel like people are aching right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, people are. Well, first of all, just thank you. Thank you for the energy, for having me, for that warm welcome. I am honored to be here. I'm always honored to hold space with my sisters, with fellow Black women, to lift us up and empower us. And so, one of the elements that embodies our power is the element of water. Of course, we know that water gets no enemy, as they say. And so, I would like to
Mm,
just pour a little bit of libation here and pray
yes.
that just as water has no enemy, that we will never have enemies, that we will be so indispensable to everyone in the world, just like water, that no one can ever think to make an enemy of us. So we just give thanks and praise as we say, Omi tutu, Ashe tutu, Ona tutu, Ile tutu, tutu laroye, tutu bobo, Egun tutu bobo, Risha tutu, and Mio tutu bobo wa, tutu orimi, touch our heads, and we pray for our oris to be cool. We say that as water is cool, we pray for our ashe, which is our sacred energy, to be cool. We pray for the road that we walk on to always be cool. We pray for our homes to be cool. We pray for the earth to be cool. We pray for the ancestors to be cool with us as they teach us lessons. We pray for Eshu Odara to be cool with us as he carries our prayers to both sides of the universe. And most of all, we pray for our own heads to be cool because we know that it is patience, Suru, that is the father of character. And so as we go into this conversation, I pray that all that is said helps to heal, helps to guide us towards good character, helps to guide us towards the highest manifestations of our destiny. May someone hear something that they need to hear this evening. May we laugh, may we cry, may we come together and feel every emotion that we are meant to feel as human beings, as sisters, one with another. We just give thanks in every moment for this conversation, and we pray that it be immensely, immensely blessed and that it be a blessing to everyone who hears now or in the replay. Ashe o ashe. To
Asheo, Asheo.
ashe.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for doing that. My cheeks is
Yeah,
burning like that. Thank you. And as soon as
you're
you started, I
welcome.
was like, it's a word.
Listen, the people's gonna let you know they there. That's the beautiful part of it. They gonna make
It's
those
a
little prickles up and
word.
down your arms and all of that. So yes,
I said
we
it
give
is a
thanks.
word. It makes sense. I can't even say it don't make sense because it
Oh, it
definitely
makes
makes
all the
sense.
sense.
It
It's the
makes
only
all the
thing that
sense.
makes sense.
You said it and I felt it. So thank you. So I wanted to ask you to start off and ask you, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Well, first of all, I was a little torty, and as an Oma
I
Obatala and a
wasn't gonna say
Virgo.
nothing.
No,
Your
I'm gonna
sister
tell on
was safe
myself.
with
I'm gonna
me.
tell on myself because it was me. It was me. I've been on the road. I just came out of doing some spiritual ceremonies and a little COVID travel, which is it was extra a little stressful trying to travel, but give thanks everything was well and safe and good.
Mm.
But I was tired. So I was up in here taking a nice, delicious nap, which I never do, but it felt so good. So I'm revived and I'm feeling good. I am ready for you and for the fam. But it's good. I give thanks right now, despite everything that's going on in the world. I feel that it's a vibrant moment. It's a moment when we are being really pushed to step up in different ways, and so I'm actually really thankful to be experiencing this moment with the world and
Mm.
to be stepping up in the ways that I can.
I wanted to also touch base with you about self-care because when I ask you how you doing, you're like, I'm good. Like how you get to good? Because I'm
It's a
trying to get to great.
process. It's a process, boo boo. It is a process. That's the one thing I always say as far as being a spiritual person, being a priestess, being someone who serves the community in that way, who prays for others, who holds space, who holds ritual, and all of those things. I always want to make it clear that it's not a place that I arrive at and I'm like, oh, I'm good every day. I
Mm,
stay good because of the things that I do every day. I'm
right.
constantly praying, constantly in that state of gratitude. That really, for me, honestly, and someone just said
How
it
do
in
you hold
Friday.
space with gratitude though? Like, how do you personally, because maybe you could teach us something. When I say us, I really mean me. I really don't care about people watching. How do you hold on to
It's
gratitude?
all
Because
for
that's
you.
my criticism all the time. You're not
Yeah,
grateful.
it's a practice. It's really a practice. It's literally
Mm,
as simple as making it a practice. Like, you know, if there's any prayer that I say, make sure that I say every day, all the time, it's grace, right? I grew up saying grace over my food, grew up the child of Baptist saying grace over my food. And it's something that I still, you know, incorporate. Of course, I say it my Orisha way now, but those moments, especially when I'm about to eat, you know, I really take that intentional moment and pray that gratitude over my food. I really take a moment to take a breath and think about where the food came from, about the earth, about
mm,
the people who might have picked or who might have processed it, you know, all of that. I think about all of that. And just, you know, make that an intentional practice. So at least 2 or 3 times a day, I'm saying a gratitude prayer. And so for me, that really helps to cultivate the energy. You know, with spirituality, that regularity is the most important thing. You know, it's really,
gratitude as a practice. We quoting you. Can
yeah.
somebody write that in the comments, please?
Yes,
Oh my
so
goodness.
gratitude as a practice, baby. You always got to
Come,
say thank you. You
come
always
on,
have
Iya. Oh my
you
goodness.
always have to
I
be
feel like you
thankful.
about to read us today. Okay, all right. I see you out here
Listen,
because in
in
my
fact,
mind, go ahead.
I gotta read you. I'm gonna read you a little bit because this is actually this
You gonna read
Odu.
me?
Well, all of everybody.
Oh, I
You
was gonna
as a
say these
you as
earrings
a
don't say I need
vessel.
to be read.
You as a vessel for everybody.
Okay, all right.
But you know, in Oshe Ogunda, the Odu Ifa Oshe Ogunda, it says that gratitude is literally what separates human beings from the other animals and creations, and it's why, you know, it is something that we are especially charged to do, is to be thankful in every moment for everything. And when you really have that as your posture, it's hard to be upset even when negative things happen. And don't get me wrong, like I got my little, you know, oh goes my husband, I got a little, I could get some fire up under me. It's not all, you know, peaches
Mm,
and cream all the time, but it is, you know, understanding how to return back to that center. And ultimately, even if you do get upset for a moment, that upsetness is able to pass through you and you kind of return back to that gratitude state. So, you know, don't think that it means that you're never going to get upset or you're never going to, but it's important to really recognize that as the place where we are supposed to be always, is in that state of thankfulness for just the air, the food, for all of
mm.
that.
It's so funny that you say that, not like haha funny, but ironic, right? Because for like Egypt, my child will be turning 4 in November, and
Mm-hmm.
something I have been vehemently against. But I feel like you just shifted my perception is about saying grace. So when we were growing up, I was I don't know if the word was christened. I think it was christened because we were Catholic at first. My mom done been every single religion on the face of the earth. So we was Catholic at first. And I remember like having to say grace with my grandmother. And like
Mm-hmm.
it was super serious. Like you had to repeat it. It was like learning timetables. Like, you know what I'm saying? We didn't know what we was thankful for, but we being forced to be thankful. And even
Mm-hmm.
now I think about telling Egypt, you say thank you. And I'm like, bitch, did you say thank you? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so for you to say,
Okay.
I mean, hello.
Modeling is the first part, you know, and it's, you know, many times we do get turned off to things when we're forced to do it, or when we're made to do it in a way that doesn't feel authentic to us, you know. So that's really, I know many people, as they move into African spirituality or other practices that may have grown up Christian, kind of move away from all of those practices, right? The grace, the prayer before bedtime, you know, all of those things. But I really recognize, I'm although I ultimately took a different route than Christianity, I'm very thankful for all of those. What those things were was instilling ritual in me, right? And instilling timing that twice at least every meal and before bed, we're going to pray. When we wake up in the morning, we're
Right.
going to pray. We're going to be thankful. And so that's something that really has stayed with me. And again, you know, I've
Mm,
adapted it and made it my own, right? And you know, but I think it's really important, and it's growing up that way. as a part of what kept me, in that space of gratitude. But I totally get it, kind of being like, okay, do we have to say this again?
Right, right. My favorite prayer, shout out to Lanisha Bogan, who traveled with me all through middle school. She used to be like, my favorite prayer is Jesus wept. I was so happy to see him cry. And I'm like, and we were Pentecostal by that time, and I was like, oh, she can't say that, whatever. But now, how do you think people how do you think that people who are transitioning into the knowing of themselves, me again, can like sort of defragment themselves from Christianity without shitting on it, for lack of a better term,
For
because
lack of a better term, yeah, we got to use the vernacular when that's what fits.
It fitted or whatever. So I think about people who are just like brand new into ATRs, and then all of a sudden, because it fits for them, obviously, for obvious reasons, for many reasons, but for the people who are, I don't want to say stuck, but also fits, for the people who are still with the journey of Christianity, right? How can we, not that I need to be assimilated again, but how can I have joyous conversations with people who believe in different faiths, without being assimilated to it, or feel like you're trying to tell me about your shit, I'm trying to tell you about my stuff,
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I frequent interfaith spaces. And so it's definitely, again, a practice. It's something that, takes time to kind of build. But one of the things, like, for example, my mother, who is a reverend, and I have recently started a joint ministry. So
talk about your podcast too. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's where I'm really excited about it. It's called Rev and Iya. And we started it for just this reason, that we know there's a lot of folks in the community who may be either transitioning into African spirituality or maybe remaining in Christianity, but wanting to know how to connect and go deeper, and wanting to know that they're not doing something wrong by doing that. And so, one of the things that I always talk about is how we got to keep it real. Like, even as we talk with one another, we have to be real about what we're talking about. And so we can't talk about Christianity without talking about the domination of Black people. We just can't. We can't talk about it without talking about Eurocentrism and brainwashing and all of these things, because it's just there, as far as thinking about how it has led us to view ourselves, how it has led us to view our saving grace as being a white man, even though we know that the image of Jesus as white is erroneous, but that's the image we've been presented with. Right. And so all of these things that have gotten into our psyches, right, and that intentionally so, right? So a religion is a space that was used to demonize us as people of African descent, was and is still used as a way to demonize us. Our power base was basically swept out from under us, and that's why, and so it can be uncomfortable to have these conversations. And one of the reasons why my mother and I are able to have these conversations is because, as a Black woman, she understands that history, and she's willing to grapple with it, even despite choosing to continue to practice and feeling moved by the practice of Christianity. She is willing to discuss those histories. She is willing to understand how we have been sort of turned against ourselves, and with Christianity being used as a vehicle. Not that that's what it's about, but that it was used as a vehicle for that to happen. And so, as long as we're able to kind of be real, then we can say, okay, now that we know that, now that we've established that, let's put that aside for a minute, and let's just look at the tenets of the traditions, right? And where we can find these common grounds.
Talk about it. What are some of the commonalities? Because I feel like people get stuck. When I say people, I mean Hoteps, get stuck at Hotep 101, right? And they don't really go past, like, for you, because you're Iya, like, that women have the most sacred place. You know what I'm saying? And it's like the men, I'll say it's the men, some of the women, but it's because they're internalizing for the men, feel like, oh, it's a man's way. I've seen women get kicked out of groups. I've seen women be demonized and ostracized because they're not respectable. But like, the woman was upheld. Gender queer folks were upheld. And it's like you say that, and it's like people are like, no, there was no homosexuality in African culture. And I'm
like, really? You really think that like we really be giving white folks way too much credit? Like, oh, they invented homosexuality. They invented
love. White
everything
people
in the
invented
world.
love.
Right. Like, stop it, actually,
Actually.
So like, actually stop. Yeah, it's hard, right? Because many times we want to go from one extreme to the other. Like,
right.
once we realize that we have been taught against ourselves, once we realize that we've been bamboozled, we're like, oh no, I gotta throw off everything that's in any way connected with that bamboozlement. I'm not there anymore, so I can't deal with anything that has anything to do with that. And then we go all the way to the other side where it's like, oh yes, no African ancestor ever did anything wrong.
Right.
It was just all exalted in the way that we like to picture it in our minds, still being influenced by the culture and the things that we're living under today, and thinking that we're, so it's important to just keep it real. Again, learning the history, understanding that re-Africanizing ourselves.
Re-Africanizing. Y'all better talk about it.
It doesn't have to be this exclusionary process of just stripping things away, but of really coming to understand the fullness of African ideas of the way that we understood the world, be it sociologically, psychologically, and all of that is embedded in our spiritual systems. And so I think it's just important to learn and to know that nobody is perfect. The ancestors were not perfect. We were not all kings and queens. We were, some of us were farmers and carpenters, and just like today, there was people working at the ancient McDonald's. There was people
not the ancient McDonald's,
anciently street sweeping and cleaning up.
Right.
We had all varieties of society, of course, because we're full human beings. Like, what kind of society? Everybody a king and a queen. Like, we gonna get done. But just understanding the fullness of us.
You better at Nas next time you say that.
It's just understanding our fullness, fullness, and honoring ourselves in our fullness. And so understanding that a part of our fullness as Africans is sexuality. Everything in African spirituality is about sex. Like, when you perform divination, you're embodying sex acts in different ways. And so there is no aspect of us that finds sex objectionable or questionable. There's no aspect of us that doesn't understand that all spectrums of being and of sexual relation have existed on the earth for as long as we've been here. What's different is the sociology around them. Now that's another discussion, right? Say, for example, that if a person was same gender loving, what their role or how they interacted with the society might have been different than the way that we are seeing folks interact with society now, right? In terms of creating separate space and holding that as a central pillar of identity. It didn't quite work that way with our sociology in the past. That doesn't mean it shouldn't work that way now, but we just have to understand too that we can't just graft our ideas from now onto the past. So we find out, for example, that there were same gender loving people in ancient times, and we're saying, oh yeah, so they were just like now, where they interacted with society the same way and felt the same way about even bodies and shifting identities or presentation of physicality. We don't know that was the case.
We're not sure. So we know that obviously two-spirited people exist. Obviously genderqueer folks existed. Is it Obatala who presents as male and female or has no gender? And Oludumare certainly has no gender, right? And so we know that these as concepts, right? And even in Christianity, if I could be so bold, to say that we are all made in his likeness and image. So I find it very funny, again, the word comes up, that people would be like, if someone is fat or if someone is unattractive to societal standards, or if someone is queer or trans, or, you know, the myriad of things poor, that we say, no, that person isn't made in God's image. Only I
Right,
am, because I'm
right,
so close to blank. But we don't know what
right.
God's image is if we all are created. It's very interesting, the conflict that exists in Christianity at times, because I hear often, God doesn't make mistakes. And my
But
best friend Crystal
then,
says he makes
right.
choices, though. So
Mm.
Crystal always be like, but God makes choices, you know?
Right. I like that.
She's very smart. And so what do you feel? I struggle with this question because the inner pick me, which is the basis for all misandry, the inner pick me that I have, right? And misandry is my personal attempt. I can't speak for other misandrists, but it's my personal attempt to deconstruct what I've been taught about who I am supposed to be, or who I'm supposed to be attached to.
Mm.
Um, why do you think that in spirituality, and especially in African traditional spirituality, as it appears in the United States of America, why do you think that women are lower on the totem pole? I think even in some most churches, I won't say some churches, only very few churches I'm aware of are women elevated to the title of pastor. Some can't get past pastor's wife, or the person that does this with the white glove on, the usher, like, you know what I'm saying, or the church mother. It's like it's always a caretaker position.
Well, first, I mean, every institution in society is reflective of the society, right? So when we talk about people creating, we create God in our image just as much as we're created in God's image. And
Mm,
so the image that's been created and put forth here in the US is the image of whiteness, basically being what is next to godliness,
I
and
felt you was coming
specifically,
with the hot bangers.
right? I mean, heterosexual white maleness,
Right.
to start with, and then femaleness, and then, everybody that kind of deviates, but heterosexual white maleness, I mean, come on, look at the Trinity. They took the woman out of, the original Trinity, mother, father, and child, productive Trinity. They took that all out. Like, no,
They was
father,
like, this
son.
nigga is one thing three
Right.
times.
Father,
Like,
Son, Holy Ghost. We go, like,
don't quote me.
how you get three males producing, okay, well, three masculine energies being productive, like that just doesn't,
Even
but
the Holy Ghost is presented as a masculine entity.
right. And so that, again,
I hate
that's
it here.
reflective of the society, right? That's reflective of the desire who we're seeking to control. So, even as we talk about, again, the kind of the history of Christianity's interaction with the world, it's not only people of African descent that it has damaged in terms of creating this myopic worldview that says things can only look this one way. Its own indigenous traditions were destroyed, its own women destroyed in their
Right.
traditions and things like that. And so there's always been a bit of ambivalence about women's power in the world, right? We
Mm,
are seen as anything that is powerful can hurt you as much as it can heal you or be good for you. And so there's always been a little bit, we talk about, people always talk about this idea of penis envy, but we don't talk about the real envy, which is womb envy, that,
ooh,
men have been subject to across cultures throughout the world. When you look at many of our spiritual practices, a lot of what they're aimed at is giving men a sort of power that women already naturally have,
to
right?
birth
Seeking
something.
to right, the power to birth something, the power to connect with the divine and have intuition, and to have us the type of knowing that is associated with the female form and vibration. And so, you see throughout the world and throughout history, these examples of female power being usurped, right? And Christianity is really the most primary example that we have, because it's the tradition that we know the most about. So we can see it happen very plainly in that tradition. And so society mirrors that, right? The society set that up to begin with. So think about who actually wrote the stories that are in the Bible, the time that they were written,
Right.
all of that kind of thing. So it mirrored that society. And now, our society, by living by these ancient mirrorings, is mirroring back the same thing, right? And
Right.
so you get this sort of feedback loop that it's, in order to break out of it, you really have to, and that's really how I landed where I landed, because the ancestors tapped your girl early, and I was like, yeah, as I'm learning all this stuff, I was like, oh word, like, wait, what? Like, I came from somebody's rib and I caused the downfall of you. Like, what? Like, nah.
Yeah, there's like mysticism so much. I wanted to ask you, well, first I wanted you to, I have a question. But the other question I want to go back to is because I just want to make sure that people understand that when you're talking about womanhood giving birth, you're not just talking about folks I assign female at birth, right? You're including trans women in the conversation because you're clearly a gender and women's like you got this on lock. And so how
Right.
does that fit
I
into?
do want to be clear though that there is, so there is definitely a respect and understanding of the full spectrum, but there's also an understanding of binarism as well, right? The night and the day and the night are binary situations. There are gradations, but ultimately, and so when we're looking at it, and again, this is one of the things that fascinates me, science and, spirituality and all of that.
Right.
It's clear that it takes a certain gametes, to
Right.
use the scientific terms, have to come together to create life. And so when we're talking about, again, although there is respect of the spectrum, I want to be clear, just because I don't want to fall into the same trap I just mentioned of kind of grafting things back onto the past. When we're talking about women and femaleness and men and maleness, we're talking about people who were born in those bodies.
And you're talking about that binary.
Right, about that
you're
binary.
addressing that binary. Okay.
Right, it's being addressed. Now, that doesn't mean, again, that there's not room for the spectrum. And I think, this is one reason why we feel that we have to come to a certain type of assignment of ourselves, is because of what has been valued and what has been devalued in society.
Okay.
So as people who have felt two-spirited, have been devalued in society, they have said, okay, some have said, well, now we have to make this choice as to whether we're going to be on this side of a spectrum or on that side, and make our bodies match it and make all of these things happen, mostly because of the way society
Right. And that's why people are seeking their freedom from gender, because it's a trap. Like sometimes the whole
the
thing
way
is
that
a
it's
trap.
been played out in our
Yes,
society, absolutely.
I will accept that wholeheartedly. That yes, I don't think it was designed to be that way. I think that that man, period, however you see it, has designed it as such. I wanted you to shift gears because you talked about our power, right? And I wanted you to tell us about your power. What is an Iya, and how did you get here on this journey? Like how were you magic and fire and water and light all in the same trajectory?
It's been a long and winding road for sure. As I said, I really feel like the ancestors tapped me from early, and that I've always felt connected to spirit, right, and to divine energy, and to fluidity, right, to this accepting of all people and all ways of being, and just wanting to experience all of that from a very young age. And so I was raised Baptist, and my mom was at the time the church nurse and very much involved in a lot of church ministry. So I was there a lot. I was at the church whenever it was open for the most part, doing all of that. But I was very clear, and she always talks about how clear I was from so young, that I didn't believe in this the way it was being presented to me. It was like, I realized that I liked spirit, right? And this is a part that we're really not able to tease out sometimes, because a lot of times when people reject Christianity or reject whatever tradition they may have been raised with, they go to this like, well, there's no God, or into an atheism or agnostic kind of position. That was never my position. I always felt the presence of spirit, right? And I always enjoyed that. But I knew that Christianity wasn't it for me. And so even as a youngster, I started studying and reading books about different cultures and how they would interact with spirit, and read about all of the isms and all of, Native American spirituality and just all kinds of things. And so eventually the question came about what we do. I was like, wait a minute, I'm a person of African descent. Why I ain't finding nothing about what we do? Why, where's that information? And so that led me into
Black spirituality matters.
Yes, absolutely. And so that led me into my studies to start, just looking into information about African spirituality. And I found that the information there was not a lot of information out there. And a lot of it also was presented by people who, weren't practitioners. And so the way that it was being presented was just different energetically. And so I actually, after I did my spiritual, well, I guess I'll go back to say how I actually really started the journey. I've always, collected rocks and just, I've done those kinds of things since I was young. And so kind of finding this way of doing it started probably in 2005 when I first went to the continent, and I went under the guidance of a woman who is a professor and a priestess of Yemoja. We went to Ghana, and I actually had a really profound experience at one of the Akan temples in Ghana. And that was when I said, okay, this is it. I said, yeah, I've been looking for this. I've been studying all these traditions, wondering what we did as a people, and now I found it. And so after that trip, it was like pretty much everywhere I turned, Orisha was there, some type of African spirituality. It was like my eyes have been tuned to see it,
right.
And so I ultimately got involved in the community in New York. And in 2008, I was guided to Nigeria to undergo my initiations. And it was really doing that led me to want to go to do a PhD and all of those kinds of things, because I really wanted to study the tradition and to be able to present information that I wasn't able to find when I was looking for it.
Right.
And to
what did they do with you at Harvard?
They didn't know what to do with me, girl.
I believe it.
It was
very rarely let Blacks that are radical come to them. So yeah.
Right. I don't know if they knew what they was getting when they was getting it, but it was funny. Speak about how spirit works, because I had just undergone my initiations, and about a year and some change prior, and had done a year wearing white as a personal sacrifice, although in the tradition in which I was initiated, it wasn't mandated, but I chose to do it. And I ended up doing another year because when that first year was finished,
it didn't take.
It took so well that Obatala was like, you know what, we really love that white. Like, you're really somebody who could have got that we're white forever reading. But we tried to give you some choices, but yeah, you need to do it again. But the thing about it was that second year in white was my first year at Harvard, right? And it was like, they didn't want me to be able to hide who I was going in the door. It was like, no, these folks are gonna know who you are from day one, know what you're about, know that this isn't just studies for you, because there have been people who were scholar practitioners who had come through before me, but no one who was really as open, who came in with whites and electrics day one, like what, and so there was a way in which really what I found, and this is one thing that I encourage, being unapologetically me, got me more of everything than any other way of being would have gotten me, so it was like, look, I'm here. Yes, I understand that I'm becoming a part of this system, and that I understand even the reason why your degrees are valuable is because of all of these things that have been set up. And I'm coming here to get it as a key for me to be able to do what I want to do later, but I'm gonna get it on my terms. And so everything, for me was really on my terms from day one. It was, I studied what I wanted to. I was blessed to have a great mentor there, Professor Jacob Olupona, who really advocates for students, advocates for women, advocates for African spirituality. And so
Okay.
it was a beautiful moment. There was like a nice group of us there who were all, not only scholars, but also had spiritual commitments to the traditions. And so it was really, it was a hostile takeover for a minute. And that we've all graduated now, and it's not that anymore.
Right,
So,
right. They were like, why are
you
they out here running this shit? Like,
right, like we got to take these reins back real quick. But no, it was really a beautiful experience. And again, it was even in recognizing all of the problematics with Harvard and higher education and et cetera, it was still coming in with that gratitude of, yeah, I'm coming in here getting some reparations. So yeah, bust how they gonna pay me to study us, and pay me to do these things for us, right? To study us, to be able to bring resources and create conferences and create things for us. That was what being there and gave me some of the opportunity and money and everything else to do. And so, it's always a balance, right? And as you try to kind of balance out working within the system and breaking it down and kicking it all down. So that's, really where the community was born, was after coming out of there and being like, yeah, okay, that was cute, but that's my key to freedom, right? It's not necessarily people, and this is a word for everybody listening, because there are definitely, people have their expectations of who they expect you to be, who they want you to
I
be.
was gonna ask you, do people ever assume that you have the PhD? Because you don't code switch often. So I mean, do people ever make an assumption like, you know what I'm saying? Because you said you show up as your authentic self, like who you are is what you gonna get.
Right. That's who you're gonna get. That's who you're gonna get. Well, I think it actually encourages people to be like, oh, so you
I
can
was
have a
about to say, I feel
PhD.
inspired.
Right. You don't have to be all stiff. Like, I had somebody actually meet me and be like, wow, I didn't even realize I could talk to people from Harvard, because I thought y'all would all be. And I'm like, no, that's just don't get me wrong. It is, it's an institution. It's an
I seen 4
institutionalized
people
place.
wear ascots coming out of Harvard. So
Right. I mean, don't let me act like there's, gym bays beating on the lawn or none of that. Like, I definitely had to, throw them bows and, create space. But the beauty part of being in a place like that and creating space is that their name, opens doors. And so anytime I went anywhere and it's like, yeah, I'm from Harvard, they're, oh, okay, yeah. Right. And that enabled me to be able to do what I do for us and to get set up for us. And so that was the evolution for me to say, so that point about expectation, when you have, a PhD from Harvard, what's expected of you is to become a professor, to go on a tenure track professorial route, pretty much at either an Ivy or some other PWI, predominantly white institution. And that's kind of what's expected of you. Like, oh, that's the pinnacle. Like, you got that so that you can get that.
I really just admire you, how you're so down to earth. When you created the communiversity, did you, I mean, I feel like you did expect it because you are blessed and highly favored, but were you like shocked about how many people are yearning to get this kind of education?
I wasn't shocked. I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude to be able to
Come on, come on, gratitude as a practice.
Come on, gratitude. For real, like, just being able, like, being in the position to present this to my community and like be like, yes, here it is. Like, you asked. People always would say to me, I wish I could take your classes. That's really a part of where this came from. When I would be teaching classes at Harvard or at Boston College or, Pacifica or wherever I've been teaching, people would say, oh, I really wish I could take your classes. And I would, and it would always make me feel away, like, dang, why can't they? Why can't I present this? Like, how can I present this to my community? And so that's really the evolution for me, is really being able to bring this out to the community, being able to be in a space where my life is sustained by the work that I do for my people. Like that's the dream for me. Like this is the dream. You are the dream for me. Like it's amazing to be able to just, have this be my job, to talk to Black women, to and men as well, Black, all of our folks, and right. To everyone on every spectrum on of personhood and Blackness, to be able to bring us together and allow us, help us to see our various places in the structures that we have and that are possible for our society, to see what's possible outside of the system. Because a lot of our issue sometimes is that we can't see anything outside of what has been presented to us, which has been so narrow and been so myopic, so so unidirectional. You have to right. Go and get this type of education, get a quote unquote job, become a cog in the machine, work 9 to 5 every day for the rest of it until you like, no, that was not. I was like, word, that's what we're supposed to be doing, because
you're an inspiration. Because it's like I hadn't considered, someone had asked me, what are you, a teacher or something? And I was like, no. And the woman standing next to me was like, yes, you are. You have a class on Wednesday. Tell us about your class, because I just signed up for your class, and I was surprised. Like Daisy was like, what? I was gossiping. I was like, Daisy, I'm in this white woman's house. I was like, and this book popped up at me, and I took a screenshot of it. And it was like, how to learn Yoruba in 24 hours. I don't know. I'm exaggerating, but that's what the book was called. And so Daisy was like, child, if you want to learn Yoruba, please, please, please reach out to my good sis. And I was like, all right. So I went to your website. It was actually very easy. And I'm looking forward to your August class. Are there still openings for people who are watching?
There are absolutely openings.
Y'all better join me.
So come on, come learn this. Come learn this Ede Yoruba. We start from the alphabet. It's really fun, not intimidating. And it's especially one thing that I'm proud of is that it's for us, and us being people who are in the African spiritual community, who are Ifa-orisa practitioners. You do not need to be initiated or anything like that. But I say that it's for practitioners because I had spent some time focusing on things that you probably wouldn't get in a standard Yoruba class. So we go over like the basic Mojuba prayer. We right. go over greetings to priests and to shrines and things like that. So yes, the community kicks back off on August the 3rd.
I'm ready for it.
Super
I've shifted around some things.
Good, girl, look, I was so excited for you signing up. First of all, too, let me go ahead and just send some special love out to my girl Daisy, the Afro mystic, powerful, wonderful, fantabulous sister who just, we just loves each other, and we always big each other up. And so when I saw her on your show, that was really, I had to go and like binge watch and listen to episodes after that because I was hooked. I was like, oh, sister with her like vibrant energy. I always love people who keep it real like I do. That's one thing I too love about African spirituality is like, we ain't saints, it's not about being perfect. The Orishas weren't perfect. There's stories right. of them doing some things.
Let me tell you something. I heard somebody bit somebody's ear. And
right, I was like, was cutting off ears. Folks was out here, slaying folks, accidentally slinging lightning bolts, and like all kind of stuff. Eshu was out here spilling palm oil on Obatala. Like right. It was pandemonium in the ancient times. There was stuff going on, right? And so that's why we can relate to them, right? That's why we can take lessons from them, and that's why I pray that folks are able to take lessons and relate to me and be like, look, I'm a real person. Harlem girl all day.
Harlem,
all day in the building. Harlem girl in the building.
Isn't Mace from Harlem?
Yes. Listen, don't start. Don't start. I actually just really
I
got
got
my Harlem
questions.
stuff back though, because I was watching the remix, the documentary on hip hop, women in hip hop fashion. Really
Right.
great documentary.
Okay.
And Dapper Dan, who was one of the original hip hop fashion icons, who's from Harlem, was on there. Something, actually, as I mentioned that, it's so I just got to get this off my chest,
Say
because as I
it.
was
Tell
watching
us.
the documentary,
We're so here.
I was salty because it starts off talking, seeking to kind of create this historical narrative, right, about Black people in fashion, but it starts in slavery times, and it starts talking about how we would,
Fashion
right,
during the
right.
1400s.
I wanted to fight the
The
air.
nigga who did Hidden Colors was on this production. I
I
promise
wanted
you.
to fight the air. Like literally when it started, I don't know what I was expecting. I was expecting maybe to see, going back to the Ghana kingdom with the
They were like,
rings.
this year in chattel slavery.
Right. Right. I was like, wait a minute. Like literally it comes on and the music, with the cotton picking.
I named it Oludumare is gonna trouble the water.
Okay. I was like, okay. And don't get me wrong, there is no, enslavement happened. There is no shame in that. There is no, that's a part of our history. But it always just irks me that, why scholars like myself and my colleagues are needed.
That we start at slavery
That we
as a
start
basis.
there. I'm like, you talking about Black fashion, and
Nas
you don't
wasn't
take it
involved
back
in
to
the production.
Ghana kingdom when we was dripping in gold and kente cloth. You don't show the ancient, Nigerians with their geles and their ashoke. You're not showing the South African warriors with their feathers like decked out, fashionable before we got here. You start with like literally, you got it. Yeah. So that was the only part of it that had me like,
somebody need to tag Nas ass because he need to be involved in these productions.
I'm like, come on, people. I'm like, can you hire your favorite
We was kings and queens
to give you some background, please? Because
right.
but no, all of that to say that it was.
But you're saying it was a good documentary.
It was a good documentary. That was the only
7 minutes and 47
seconds. Skip forward past the. You already know when that music started at the beginning. You like, oh God.
You was like, what is LaShawn Pace doing in this documentary?
I was like, really, y'all? This what we doing? Not like this, not like this. But no, it was good, and it just renewed my Harlem pride. And it also, one of the things that came through was the hard road that a lot of times we have to face and go over, and how much time it takes to build to where we get successful. And a lot of times, all we see is the end. We don't see the things that people went through to get there, right? When people see me, they see whatever they see that's being presented, but they don't see the blood, sweat, tears. They don't see the nights, and so that's what it made me think of when I was watching it. It's like, wow, we see, celebrities or folks out here dressed and looking how they look. Right. And we never think about who's behind it and how long it took that person and all of that. So it just really made me appreciate all of that behind the scenes. It's like ritual, when you see a ritual, when a ritual happens, an initiation or some big ritual, the Iya or the Baba gets the, accolades, but all the other folks that have been running around doing the work, right, are the ones. And so again, it comes back to that gratitude piece of always, being thankful.
You just want to keep circling back to this practice gratitude.
I want to lead by example. So
I would be most grateful if you could share with us, because you were talking about conflict earlier, right? Mm-hmm. So to a person who uses petty as a productive praxis, how should one navigate conflict, knowing that, as Josie Smith would say, that there's a frame of reference from which our ancestors come, then there's like the lessons in this day and age that I have learned through trial and error myself, right? And then there's the fact that people will try to test your patience, or try to test your gangster, or just try to test you. And so how do we find balance in conflict? Because I feel like whenever someone goes through conflict, we do this thing where we're like, couldn't be me, sis. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, it was you last month.
Right. It could be you. And it is
could be
you. Right. We love to think we gangster, don't we? I be all the time. I be out here like, yeah, like, and then I'm like, yeah, no, not really, though. I was kidding, you know. But no, conflict is going to happen. And let's be clear, like, Africans was the original petties. Okay, like you could cut those looks, just look somebody up and down like, really, see yourself. That's the original.
I feel like the most original petty African phrase this year, maybe even last year too, is "I beg," like, please,
I beg,
bitch.
oh,
Like,
I beg, please, I beg. Hey.
I'm like, okay.
That's the original. That's that African petty, right? Just
and it's traveled, right? You know, the philosopher John Henry Clarke says it's not where the slave ship dropped us off at, Haiti, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, Cuba, right? It's where they picked us up at. Everybody that I know who is African in blood, in heredity, and nacimiento, be doing like to motion or something like over
right
there,
and pointing, right? You be that's that African petty right there. We be like, look, see, right? You eyebrows, lips, right? You know, you got ways to talk to each other. Right. You know, and I think really a lot of what we now call being petty is really keeping each other in check in various ways. And I think that doing it
like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
No, like, just say that till you do right by me.
Right. Check yourself. Like that's really what that is. And so, you know, I think that there needs to be more of it. There needs to be more of
I just needed someone to enable my behavior. Thank you.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't hold up. Now, don't y'all be like, Iya Funlayo said we got full license to be petty. Like I bestowed the bless. No, but no, we need more of just checking each other and not being passive aggressive about it. Like that's the part that takes it into that realm of pettiness, is when we are being passive aggressive instead of confrontational. And one thing that I always talk about is how, you know, African epistemologies and sociologies and ways of being.
What does epistemology mean? Because I struggled with that word when I read it in your bio.
No, you didn't struggle. You did good, girl. You did good.
Okay, thank you for the affirmation of what I say
in my classes. Clap for yourself. It's ways of knowing. Epistemology is, you know, knowledge, ways of knowing, ways of teaching. And so our ways of knowing say that we need to bring things out into the open and that we need to, you know, address them so that we can move forward. And so the part of pettiness that I don't like is that sort of undergirding, like, I'm gonna talk to this one about you, but I'm not gonna tell you what.
Say it to my face.
To change, right? Say it to my face. Keep it 100. And so that was the farce. Oju face to face. That's the African way. Like you didn't say nothing unless you said it to a person's face.
I have had conflict with people who have come to me to talk to me. I thought about the conflict, but they came to me about something else totally different. And I'm like looking at them like, so you're not gonna say it, huh?
You're not gonna talk about the conflict.
You're gonna keep it to yourself, huh?
Right. And it's hard. Okay. It's hard because, you know, in American society, Western society, we're really taught, it's like this weird thing. We're taught that we should have the freedom to say whatever we want. Right. But that by and large, we hold things in. We, you know, again, we discuss people with other people as opposed to saying to that person, this is what it is, you know, and bringing that truth out. And so that's one thing. It actually made me clutch my pearls when I was in Nigeria. At times, you know, I spent a combined total of 18 months there, and my longest stretch was a year. And, you know, that's, you really being there for a year, you know, I really got to like be a part of my community and just, you know, just see things on a day-to-day basis and all of that. And I would be clutching my pearls because people would be like, you know, the way you behaved yesterday, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. You know, they will tell you straight up and you're like, oh, word, like, damn, sorry, you know, and then
and it's kind of like you have to process it right then and there.
Right. You got to talk about it. You got to say, like, there's no hiding. There's no BSing of, oh, no, like, and they'll say it in front of everybody. And now you got to own up to it.
But is it like the internet where if they say it in front of everybody, you got people that take this person's side and people that take that person's side? What about circle processes do we need to get back to?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what this is, and that's also why why eldership in the community is important, right? And this is why, and I'll give you another one of these Harvard words, why African societies were typically gerontocracies, right? They were
Gerontocracy and epistemology. Okay.
yes, those are our words for today, right? So the gerontocracy
Gerontocracy.
means that it goes by age in society, that authority comes with age. And
Can
so
I say gerontocratus?
could you say that?
Nigga,
Go ahead, girl. Just say it. Oh yeah, say it. Work
it's
that.
gerontocratus.
We go
ahead.
in this gerontocratist society. Yeah, I do that all the time. So work it out. Work it out. But the point is that everybody gets a chance to go through those age cycles, right? So it's actually and don't get me wrong, this is not, it's not a perfect system, but it's a system that at least in theory everybody would get to go through those cycles. You're going to be a child, you're going to be an adult, you're going to be an elder, and there's always going to be someone, you know, under you in that hierarchy. And so that's where the process is able to happen in a safe way, because typically an elder would be called into a process like that, and their word would be the final word. So whoever the elder person is who is in that process, who is there when that conversation is happening, they're listening to both sides, like a mediation type of situation, listening to both sides, and then, you know, helping to render a decision. And, you know, one thing that I always appreciate is, like, even when it's their child, even when it's, you know, when it's somebody that's close to you, being able to be, you know, very honest about that, you know, like, yeah, you're my kid, but what you did was wrong. Right. And being able to model that's powerful, because in our society, we're taught that, you know, if you do anything wrong, you're just to be discarded. Cancel culture, right? You do something wrong, we discard you. We don't deal with you no more. That's it. You're done. Right. And even in relationships and things like that, it's like, oh, if we have a problem, we just break up. Like, and not to say that
I don't want to talk about relationships no more.
Right. You know, but you know, that's just the mentality that we have.
Right.
And this is not, you know, clearly, don't get me wrong, if there's some abuse or something egregiously wrong going on, but many times there isn't. It's just that
I talk about this all the time. I'm like, it's the abuse of annoyance. Like, you know,
right, like just
we
being
talking about
annoyed.
actual abusers, fine. But a lot of times niggas be like, oh, I don't like that time. Do you know that bitch was talking shit about me? Da-da-da. I'm like, it was talking shit. It's not harm because it's abuse. Like, it's not abuse because you were harmed by it. I got stepped on my toe on the train. I didn't call the bitch who did an abuser. Like, I mean, she did something wrong. It was harmful. It hurt. And I moved past it. Now, whether she said sorry or not, I do categorize
that
her
might
differently.
Be right.
I do categorize her differently, whether she changed her behavior and step on somebody else's foot. If she's a habitual foot stepper,
habitual foot stepper, then we got right.
Once and we don't know. We don't know.
3 times is a pattern. Hey, so we got ways to deal with that.
Habits.
Right.
Look at our habits.
Yeah, you keep stepping on feet, and then we might have to go get the
but if you was
ready
to take
you, you know?
Exactly, if you was to take the root cause, if I was to take like woke book, which I, you know, someone said that I was a part of it, and I'm like, I'm really on the fringe. I don't really talk to anybody because I learned my lesson. 2017, I might have been involved, but 2018, 2019, 2020, I was like, y'all bitches is wild. I'll be over here. Like, you know what I'm saying? But if you was to funnel all of it from the lowest to the high, or like you said, the gerontocratus, everyone should be able to have a turn, but everyone's concerned about being the great black hype, like, you know what I'm saying? Right. And so I'm really looking forward to days that we can talk about conversing with one another in at a healing space. Yeah. And instead of like Luana Morales always talks about, where we meet each other at the wound. Right. Like, I had a trauma from 2 years ago, and it reminded me of the trauma that I couldn't control from 10 years ago. So I lash out with the person, or vice versa, right? How can we find healing in the midst of a global pandemic, in the midst of a global uprising, in the midst of already compounded trauma and pettiness and things that we should be using to protect ourselves, but we then damaging each other in the process? Like, what would be your advice to someone who's just like, nah, I just want to be on a straight and narrow? Or the crooked and wavy.
You know, you already know what I'm finna say, right?
Well, no, I don't.
Gratitude.
Listen,
Bringing
thank
it
you.
back.
This has been another episode of The Full Set. Gratitude
Bringing it back, because ultimately, you know, again, even in the midst of everything that's going on, if you are here right now listening to us, that means you got somebody's internets, whoever paid for it, whether it was mama, daddy, sugar daddy, you, whoever paid for it, you got some. That means that
sugar daddy.
You can hear. That means you can hear. That means you could see. That means you got a whole lot of things going on. And so, you know, I always literally return to that in the face of whatever is happening, in the face of whatever I'm facing, I always seek that thing that I can be grateful for and say, you know, what can I be grateful for in this moment? And how can I help? Right? Helping others, as you know, again, it may sound cheesy and cliche, but you know, helping others really puts into perspective everything that you have or don't have going on in your life, right? When you're able to, you know, go in and help. And right now it's a little bit tough to do some of the volunteering things, but I would do, like, you know, feeding of the homeless or community gardening or things like that, where you really are putting your labor into a direct thing that's directly affecting people. A lot of the issue that we have today, honestly, and why we have so much despondency, depression, and these kinds of things is that we are barely human anymore, right? That's the issue. We're so disconnected from what actually makes us human. Like, there are children out here that don't know a hamburger came from a cow, that actually don't know that. Right. Or that a French fry is from a potato, or that, you know, like these kinds of things. There are adults out here that don't know where, you know, have never seen their food growing or know what a plant looks like. Like, you could we could be out here starving and not know that we're walking by all the stuff we normally eat, because we just don't know what it looks like if it's not in a box or something, right? Right. So really reconnecting to our humanity, reconnecting to earth, breathing, growing something, seeing it grow from our hands, being able to eat something that you grew directly, being able to, you know, take a bath, a spiritual bath with an herb or a plant that you grew, right? Feeling that connection. Right. That's a part of what brings us back into feeling good and feeling connected, and being able to get past those hurts and those traumas and those things, that no matter what, we still here. Right. We're still here. We're breathing. As long as there's life, there's another chance to do something better. And so even through the hurt, you know, finding those ways to be of service, finding those ways to be grateful, that's literally, you know, where the happiness is, when we can be, the more human we can be. And so ironically, we've seen families, one thing that I've loved about watching about this time is that people are understanding the importance of connecting to one another. So you're seeing families who haven't been connected, you know, doing Zoom calls. And a friend of mine just did a whole family reunion on Zoom, and birthday parties and baby showers and all these things that folks might not have really come to. We might have had every reason why we couldn't come, right? And so this moment of being forced to kind of be still has really reconnected us with one another in many cases in a real way. And I just pray that it continues, and that we continue to create these spaces, that we continue to cultivate this energy. You know, it's important. And as I say too, you know, daily practice is important. So prayer, meditation. I have a meditation album that, interesting.
Oh, you got an album? You was dropping the bangers? Okay, all right.
Dropping albums, you know.
I didn't know.
Got these hot tracks out in the street.
I see you out here, Sim. Okay.
But it's Orisha Focal Meditation Volume 1 with Iya Funlayo. And it came out of, you know, I started doing this meditation technique with some of my girls while I was at Harvard. And they had been asking me since then, to record them or, put them together. So I got together with my homegirl, Adrian TT Talks, Bait. Shout out to her, my fabulous producer, Black woman producer, y'all. Like, come on. Out here making beats and whatnot. And so she put the soundscape behind my vocals, and it's just magic. So I invite the family, to check that out and just, cultivate energy. You have to cultivate your energy. This is something that I talk about all the time. We can't just lean into whatever is not feeling good. People,
Right.
we got this kind of idea that, that when they say misery loves company, they mean that, right? There's this like just leaning into not feeling good. And that has become almost a trend of like, yeah, I'm Aggie. I'm, like this whole being Aggie has become a trend. And so it's like, no, let's make being peaceful and happy a trend. Let's let that be the next hot shit in the streets. Like,
It's a hot, happy summer. That's what it is.
Come on, hot, happy summer.
Are you twerking? Are you twerking?
Mama say, mama sa, mama kusa. Mama say.
I have a question to ask. It's my second to last question. What do you think is the westernized demonization about African traditional religion? What is that about? Because it's like, I talked to somebody, I was like, let me read you real quick, whatever. And I pull, and they're like, oh, but I can't believe it. Even though it was spot on what I said, not just because I said it, but because spirit guided. But it was spot on. It was like, nah, I can't listen to that because that's devilish or whatever. I was not listening. I watched Roots to Heaven, which was produced by Jaimon Hansu from Amistad. And he was talking about how voodoo is like derived out of an Ifa practice, and that the West demonizes it so much, but actually is Western culture in the United States of America the biggest purveyor of sacrifice in the world because of the meat production that happens here. Like we don't even hunt like to survive, we just hunt for consumption.
Right. And then half of it don't even get consumed. Like,
who are you telling? So why do you think that, like, even someone who's like, oh, I read my horoscope, or, like, oh, I'm a Pisces or whatever, we struggle with the fact that, like, society has taught us to demonize where we come from, like the traditions of where we come from.
Well, I mean, just real quick, colonialism, that's always the answer right now. But it really, the demonization of our traditions has everything to do with our oppression. You can't oppress people who know that they are God. You can't oppress people who know how to blow powder in your face and make some things happen. You can't oppress people who got all of that going on. And so that was the real first stage in our oppression. And this is something that
is to remove our belief from us of
who
we are,
our spiritual systems, to seek to remove. And one thing I want us to understand, because we often hear this narrative that makes us think that maybe, African folks, just as soon as people arrive with the Bible, we're just like, oh, okay, thank you, and took it. And it was not like that at all. It took over 100 years to gain genuine converts on the continent. Missionary records talk all the time about how the people was like, nah, F out of here. Like, what? Who, what? Huh? Nah.
You were like, I got these feathers, you see?
Right, like, nah, like, do what? With what? Nah, you good. Like, oh, or what they might have done too is be like, oh, Jesus, oh, okay, cool. Like, he could go over here with the rest of the Orishas, right? And they were like, wait a minute, that's not quite
put this Jesus over here on the altar.
Yeah, just put Jesus next to Obatala and Eshu, and he will be very comfortable over there. He's a very good Orisha.
Yes.
He brought these white people all the way over here, so he must be very powerful. Right. And so, so they started to target children. That was the big thing, right? This is where our modern education system comes from. Oh, there's a great documentary everybody needs to watch called Schooling the World, The White Man's Last Burden. And yeah, you already know what it's going to be about. And so this is actually, I have to shout out the Ecoversities Alliance, because they are a collection of groups of independent schools that seek to bring back Indigenous ways of knowing from all around the world, to put forward Indigenous epistemologies, and to
I knew you was going to say that word again.
You know I was going to say it again. You knew
I was like, that's the knowing. That's the know. I got it. I got it down pat.
You got it. See, girl, you on it. You on it. And so, you know, that has been a great group to be in for inspiration, to really see how people are doing this all over the world. Let's understand, you know, and I have some articles and things I can share with you about this, but Black people aren't the only ones who this has happened to, right? The global domination of Europe and Christianity and Islam as well, right, is global, right? Every there's nowhere in the world that it hasn't touched. There's no people in the world that it hasn't touched. So when we, you know, even when we're talking about, you know, South American shamanism, and we're talking about you know, everywhere that we go, we can see the vestiges of this. We can see you know, and so understanding that the very first oppression that was instantiated by the papal bulls that had been signed by the Catholic Church were edicts about religion, right? We focus a lot on race, but religion was the first thing that had an edict against it, that said anybody who's not a follower in the way that we have outlined it is outside. And now you can guess what you can do.
They created a curriculum for us, to assimilate us.
And not just to assimilate us, but to just come take our shit. Like, oh, if they don't follow this book.
Another white person talking about a systemic constellation, I'm going to scream.
I can't. I'm not even going. We're
not gonna talk about it.
Even hear that.
Look, I'm about to get kicked off the Zoom call list. It's fine. The whole thing is fine.
But it's always been about power and control. Is the bottom line. It's never been about the actual beliefs. It's never been about the content of the beliefs. They know that we are powerful and that our stuff is, you know, that it works, that it transforms. That's why so many are trying to get at it now. Right. And been trying to get at it, not just now, been trying to get at it. Come on, we had enslavers who employed the use of their root doctors who were on their plantations, right, and things like that. So even the people who have spoken out most vehemently against our traditions know their power and use them under the cover of night. And so it's all about power and control. It's all about seeking to keep us scared. Right? If you believe that you are born into sin, if you believe that your whole life has to be about trying to come up from under some black stain on your soul, then it's easy to control you. Say, hey, wait a minute, do what I say. Otherwise, remember that black stain on your soul, you're gonna go to hell. Like, you know, and then we like, oh, you know, African spirituality doesn't say that. We say, look, do what's right so that you can have a good life and live well. Right? Like, that's like the blessing of wealth, meaning resources to feed yourself, the blessing of children, meaning the continuation of the species, and the blessing of long life. Right? That's it. That's what we're going for, right? And so, you know, how do we get there? We get there by being good to one another. We get there by being people of Iwapele, of gentle and humble character. Right? That is the way. It's not because we're sinners, not because we came to the world stained, but because we understand that life is sustained by creation. And so we seek to be the highest and most creative beings that we could be. That's it.
Thank you so much for this. My last question for you. Yeah, I have to ask you a two-pronged question, because I have one eyebrow that's drawn differently from the other one, right? So I'm just a complicated.
You see, I knocked my bendy off and tried to just slide past. I was like,
listen, when I said I was like Megan Thee Stallion, you seen her live? First of all, it was very powerful, but her bang kept slipping. I was like, man, I was yelling at the thing. Just tuck it underneath the other bang, ma'am. It's fine. She ain't hear me. It's fine. But what I was trying to say was, is that the question that I ask all of my guests is a two-pronged question. The first part is you already admitted it to it, so I have to modify my question now. You was like, "Oh, I went to binge watch some episodes." So the first question is there anything that you sat with me for an hour and a half, which we only schedule an hour? Is there anything that you was like, I'm really shocked that Didi Delgado did not bring this topic up, or, oh, wait, I need to promote this, right? And then the second part of the question is, since you was recommended, who would you like to see on the show?
Well, there's nothing. No, I came into it so open. I love for
Same. I didn't even write down no questions.
Yeah, I love every space to be organic. I love every conversation to develop as it's supposed to, because there's going to be some gems, there's going to be something that somebody's going to hear that they need to hear. So I think it's been wonderful in that regard. I love all the things that we have been around the world, and yeah. I wanted to be a singer. Right? I like Shang a little Shang, but
Shang.
to be here all week, y'all. So that's been beautiful. And as far as recommendations, wow, there are so many.
The gerontocracy,
right?
Recommendation.
Let me recommend some gerontocratus. Actually, the very first person who came to mind, who I think you would really have a great time talking to, is one of my goddaughters.
Your goddaughter. Okay, come on.
Yeah, and her name is Alondra. She's also known as Island Bruja. And she's been doing a lot of incredible work, especially around, kind of what we're talking about in terms of bringing folks into conversation. She has this series called, this is so bold that I love this, called But Do You Hear Me Though? Which is for white women allies to listen to Black women. So white women allies pay.
Oh, you already need to know. I need to talk to Sib. Okay.
Yeah, you need to talk to her because it's I think y'all's energies would get along. But really, and in honor of the gerontocracy, right?
Yes.
I'm loving to recommend somebody who's younger than me, because the youth is the future. That's it. Like, I'm not old, I'm 40, but I'm, realizing that 40, I'm like, I'm moving towards middle age. Like, youngins is calling me ma'am and stuff and auntie and stuff like
that. I wish they would.
So I'm like, oh,
you know how long it took for me to draw this eyebrow on? I wish somebody would call me ma'am.
I'm saying I had to just accept it after a minute. I'm like, oh, I do got some grays peeking out. Let me tuck that in real quick. I'm like, man, I'm talking to. But, I really love to encourage, really shout out. I got to shout out all of my wonderful goddaughters and Ile Ashe Ray, powerful women doing wonderful things, Reiki teachers and psychologists and, healers of all kinds. We really, one of the things that we all seek to do as we come together is bring our expertise together to heal the community. It's not just about me, but really all of us coming together to bring our medicine. Like, there needs to be more, that's one thing too, I guess, as we prepare to close out, that I really want to emphasize about African culture and about us as Black people is that we are communal people. And that Black women, especially, we ran-ish. We was the marketplace, like everything. Us working together, Black women working together has literally made everything happen that's ever happened on the face of the planet. So we need to recognize that, and we need to be there for one another. We need to big one another up. We need to recognize, like, somebody started, I saw somebody else who kind of started an online school situation close to when mine started, and somebody said, oh, well, you see so-and-so's doing it too. And I was like, great, right? We need more. Just like, there's no white society.
Can you repeat that again?
We need more.
No, before that, you said someone came up to you, and instead of you engaging with your ego and being like, yes, can you believe she did that bum ass shit? Like, you know what I'm saying? You was like, well, that's great because I need help. We need to get this messaging out.
Right. There's a lot of Black
Listen,
people in the world. I
we
can't take
different.
care of all of them. I can't take care of everybody. I can't teach
Right.
everybody in the world. Like, so understanding this was something that we all had. All African women knew how to pick up their kola nut and divine and check on things for their family. We all knew how to go to our herbal garden and pick medicine for our family. We all knew how to do these things. It was not exclusive to being a priest or an initiate or anything like that. There's certain things that go along with those titles, but understand that divination and medicine making is Black women's work, period. No, but there's no initiation required. This woman's work. So don't get me started, because we'll be up in here harmonizing. You got me acting silly. See, that's what happens when I take a nap before my interview. I come in like,
no, I'm ready for a nap. I'm totally ready for a nap. So I just wanted to say that the words, like, they hear, right? Like, you know, I'm not gonna cry. I really appreciate this conversation. And I think I called you like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and I was like, what are we gonna talk about? We didn't talk about none of the things.
We let spirit flow. That's how we do.
You know, I don't even know where I put the paper, to be honest, or whatever. So like, I just want to say that I appreciated you, and I loved your energy from the first time I met you. You are an amazing human being. I think that the work that you're doing for yourself is reflecting in our community. And I just want to say that I honor that in you. And I'm going to learn as much as I can, because someone being newly initiated, I think I just need to do what I need to do. Like, there's a calling on my life, and I can either run from it, or I could pay attention to the lesson, like, you know. And I think that that's why I keep running into other issues, because I'm just like, I'll be over here and everybody else's shit and don't be in my own. So I just want to say thank you, because you've inspired me to just listen to the elders in my community who are like, you need to do what you need to do, and this is how you need to do it. And I was like, I'm not doing that.
No.
I'm not doing that. Are you nuts? You know? So I appreciate you so much. This has been an enlightening conversation. I will definitely have to come back to this and listen to it again and again, like you said, and pick up those gems. So thank you.
For sure. You're welcome. And thank you. Thanks for the invitation and for your beautiful energy. And, you know, I just encourage you and everybody out here listening to just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You know, Ifa says it's bit by bit that we eat the head of the rat. It's bit by bit that we eat the fish. And that a hungry man does not rush to eat hot soup. So when, you know, we have to just be gentle with ourselves, be kind with ourselves, recognize that we are in the midst of a pandemic. We are in the midst of a lot that is challenging us emotionally. And so just to be gentle and just connect and just be human, connect with one another, love one another, talk to one another, look at one another, pray together, and, you know, just keep on keeping on.
Thank you. So many comments have been left for you. This has been another episode, a wonderful episode of The Full Set.
I'm so excited. I'm gonna be in the comments. I'm gonna come come jump in the comments real quick.
All right, peace.
And you know, I have to point out too, but as we go, as we're smiling, that we are both Gap girls.
Come on, Diastema.
So one of your words that you're gonna learn in Yoruba is AG. So when you have that, they call you AG.
AG.
So, and they say it's very beautiful. So we are both extremely
so mad comments did come through about how beautiful we both are. So I was just like, I hear it from y'all and I don't believe y'all, but Asheo. So thank you.
Yes, you better believe it, girl. And I am so happy you put your wrap on for me. You just looking like the Kenya doll.
Look, my little baby hair is like escaping a little bit, but
but see, that's keeping it. That's the 2020 and the you know, the style going on, because you know the baby hair coming back. I'm gonna have to pull some out outside my head wrap.
Shout out to Miss Prissy, who just sent me these amazing edge control that smell like mango and coconut butter at the same time. And it's been holding. You understand what I'm saying to you? I might start putting on my eyebrows. I don't know. So I appreciate y'all. And I hope that you have a great evening.
Blessings, everybody.
Blessings to you too.